Showing off makes you weak, Machiavelli's forbidden rule. Why is it that the loudest people are often the most fragile? Why do those who constantly seek the spotlight, who flaunt their wealth, their knowledge, their power, why do they so often fall the hardest when the tides turn? We live in a culture addicted to display. Social media has turned our lives into performance stages where validation is currency and attention is the throne. But what if this obsession with visibility, with being seen, is actually a sign of deep insecurity? What if the very act of showing off is not a demonstration of power, but a confession of weakness? Niccolo Machiavelli, the infamous political philosopher whose name has become synonymous with cunning and manipulation, had insights far deeper than most people realize. His most dangerous teachings were not about deception or cruelty, they were about restraint, about silence, about the hidden strength of those who do not need to perform. One of his most forbidden rules, rarely quoted, often misunderstood, is that power that must be proven is not real power at all, and this runs directly against everything modern life teaches us.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's dive into the heart of it. You've felt it before, that urge to prove yourself, to let others know you're smart, successful, accomplished, to be respected, admired, feared even. But here's the paradox. The more energy you invest into proving your worth, the more you reveal that you doubted yourself. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He observed that truly powerful rulers didn't constantly remind others of their greatness. They didn't need to. Their power was felt, not flaunted. It was in their silence, their patience, their unpredictability. And here's the secret. When you stop announcing your strength, people begin to sense it. You become a mystery. And mystery is magnetic. So why do we struggle with this? Why do we feel this compulsive need to show off, to build the illusion of being more? It's because we've confused attention with authority, but they are not the same. One is given and one is taken. Attention is cheap. It can be bought, faked, manipulated. But authority, real, grounded, quiet authority, can only come from within. It's cultivated through self-discipline, self-trust, and most importantly, restraint. Machiavelli knew that the most dangerous man in the room is not the one who brags about what he will do, but the one who says nothing and simply acts when the time comes. Let's go deeper. When you show off, what exactly are you trying to achieve? Approval? Envy? Fear? These are all external reactions, and that right there is the trap. When your sense of self depends on how others respond to you, you are no longer in control. You've handed your power away to their opinions. Machiavelli would call this political suicide, because now every move you make is reactive. You're dancing for the crowd. But the true strategist, the true philosopher king, the true artist of life, they don't dance, they orchestrate, quietly, from behind the curtain. There's a reason why Machiavelli's The Prince is still studied centuries later. It's not because it teaches you how to conquer others, it's because it teaches you how to conquer yourself. And the first battle is always against the ego. The ego wants to be seen, praised, admired. The ego screams, "Look at me!" But the wise individual, the one who has internalized Machiavelli's forbidden rule, knows that every time you seek admiration, you reveal a wound. Real strength doesn't shout, it doesn't need to. We often mistake loudness for leadership, But leadership, like all forms of power, is rooted in control, and control starts with the self. Can you resist the urge to respond? Can you stay silent when your pride begs you to speak? Can you let your actions speak so clearly that your words become unnecessary? That is the true test. And it applies not just to politics and power, but to every area of life. Think about your relationships, your career, your creative work. Are you doing it to be seen, or are you doing it because it aligns with something deeper, something unshakable? Here's a question most people never ask. Would you still do what you're doing if no one ever knew you did it? If there were no applause, no recognition, no likes or followers, would the act still matter to you? Machiavelli's wisdom challenges us to live from a place of essence, not image, to build our lives like castles underground, solid, hidden, untouchable. Because here's the truth: the most powerful forces in the world are invisible. Gravity, time, silence. And the most commanding people are the ones who can sit in a room and say nothing and still change the entire dynamic. Showing off makes you weak because it outsources your identity. It exposes your hunger. It makes you visible, yes, but also vulnerable. And the world is ruthless with the vulnerable. But when you stop showing off, when you start cultivating quiet power, something incredible happens. You move differently. People lean in. They don't know why they respect you, but they do. And that's real power. Unspoken, touchable. The power of silence. Why the loudest voice in the room always loses. Think of the last time you were in a room where someone dominated the conversation with volume, with bravado, with endless self-congratulation. Maybe they had the most impressive resume, maybe they were the most vocal, the most animated, and yet, if you observed closely, you likely sensed something beneath all that noise: anxiety. Insecurity wrapped in confidence. The louder someone speaks, the more fragile their grip on power often is, because silence, true grounded silence, is a signal of control. It says, I don't need your validation to exist. And that is terrifying to the insecure and magnetic to the wise. Machiavelli understood this, not just politically but philosophically. He watched how rulers rose and fell, and he noticed that those who could remain quiet in the face of provocation were the ones who lasted. Why? Because silence is strategy. It creates space, and in that space others reveal themselves. When you're silent, people fill in the gaps with their own projections. They wonder what you're thinking. They question your intentions. They overestimate your strength. Every unnecessary word you speak gives away a piece of your strategy, your psyche, your leverage. But when you speak only when needed and with precision, your words land like thunder, because they are rare and they are earned. Let's bring this into the modern world. We've been conditioned to believe that constant output equals influence. Post more, talk more, show more. But this is the myth of digital relevance. In truth, the moment you become predictable, you become ignorable. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of depth. It's the signal that you are not reacting to the world, but observing it, calculating, choosing when and how to engage. And that terrifies people, because most are addicted to reactivity They say what they feel in the moment. They defend every attack. They announce every move. But Machiavelli warned us, the more you speak, the more you reveal. And the more you reveal, the less powerful you become. So ask yourself, how many times have you spoken just to fill the silence, to prove you were smart or right or relevant? And how often did that leave you feeling exposed, misunderstood, or misused? Every word you say is a thread others can pull. Every opinion you broadcast becomes a position you must defend. But the silent man, the one who listens more than he speaks, who waits, who watches, he becomes unreadable. And unreadable people are powerful because you can't fight what you can't predict. You can't manipulate what you can't read. Think of nature. The most dangerous animals don't roar. They stalk in silence. The deadliest storms are the quietest before they strike. Silence is not absence, it is potential. And potential is power. Machiavelli would argue that true leaders don't need to be known, they need to be felt. Their presence carries weight not because they demand attention, but because they command it without effort. You can't fake that. It comes from being anchored, from not needing the crowd, from being completely okay with being misunderstood, underestimated, or even ignored. But this silence must come from strength, not fear. There's a difference between strategic silence and cowardly avoidance. One is composed, the other is scared. You must know yourself deeply to hold silence well. You must be able to sit with discomfort, with not being chosen, with not being praised. And that's why most people can't do it. They need noise because it distracts them from the emptiness they feel inside. But the powerful person, the Machiavellian archetype, has made peace with that emptiness. They've turned it into stillness, into presence, into a weapon. So here's the challenge. Can you walk into a room and say nothing and still be felt? Can you resist the urge to prove yourself and instead let your energy do the talking? Can you observe while others perform? If you can, you'll start to notice something strange. People will begin to defer to you without knowing why. They will seek your approval, your opinion, your presence, not because you asked for it, but because you withheld it. The loudest voice in the room can dominate the moment, but the quietest one can shape the future. The shadow of insecurity. Why needing to impress will always backfire. What drives us to impress others? At first glance, it looks like ambition, confidence, the desire to rise, to be recognized, to make our mark. But if we look deeper, if we strip away the layers of social conditioning and ego, we find something much more fragile at the core: insecurity. And Machiavelli, ever the observer of human behavior, recognized that insecurity is one of the most dangerous weaknesses a person can have, not because it makes you emotional, but because it makes you predictable. Needing to impress others means you are not in control of yourself. You are in the hands of their reactions. And once someone understands that about you, they can own you. Insecurity, when hidden behind charisma or success, often appears as confidence, but it leaks out through over-explaining, over-posting, over-promising. You can feel it in conversations where someone won't let silence sit for even a second, in the way they name drop, humble brag, or turn every topic back to themselves. What's really happening is they're trying to convince you of something they haven't convinced themselves of yet. And Machiavelli saw this not just in individuals, but in kings, generals, and statesmen. The ruler who needed constant praise, who surrounded himself with flatterers who made grand displays of power, he was always the easiest to defeat. Because his need to impress was a map of his vulnerabilities. Here's the thing about trying to impress people. It always backfires in the long run. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Because the moment you try to impress someone, you put them in a position above you. You are, consciously or not, seeking their validation. And once someone senses that you need something from them, respect, admiration, approval, you've already given away your leverage. They may not even do it on purpose, but they will feel that imbalance. Humans, being what we are, often exploit it, even subtly, even unconsciously. Machiavelli would say this: if you must impress, do it without trying. Let your actions speak, let your results whisper, let your presence carry the weight. Because when people discover your depth without you advertising it, the impression is 10 times stronger. Why? Because it wasn't handed to them. It was earned through observation. The truth is, people are far more impressed by what they sense than by what they are told. When you speak too much about your virtues, your accomplishments, your strengths, you rob people of the opportunity to discover them on their own, and discovery is powerful. It creates belief, ownership, respect. So ask yourself, what part of you still needs to be seen to feel real? What would happen if you stopped trying to be impressive and just focused on being undeniable? Not by proving, but by becoming, by refining your craft, your presence, your discipline, so thoroughly that even your silence speaks volumes. The irony is, the less you try to impress people, the more they tend to be impressed, because you're no longer playing their game. You've outgrown it. People chase status, reputation, image. But Machiavelli reminds us, the ones who truly hold power don't chase. They attract. And they attract by being rooted, calm, focused. They do not need the spotlight. They are the fire that lights the room. Invisible thrones, how real power is built in silence and seen in time. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need a crown, a title, or a trophy to justify its presence. It's invisible, at least at first, but over time, it becomes undeniable. Machiavelli understood that the most influential people are not those constantly in the spotlight, but those who move behind the scenes, shaping outcomes while others chase credit. They don't need to be known, they need to be effective, and effectiveness, by its very nature, doesn't require applause, it only requires results. The throne worth sitting on is not the one people can see, it's the one you build inside yourself, quietly, patiently, away from the noise. That throne is forged in the fire of restraint, the discipline to not react, the strength to remain still, the wisdom to speak only when necessary. Most people want power now, they want recognition now. But Machiavelli teaches us that true power is slow. It grows in shadows, in silence, in the unseen spaces where character is formed and strategy is honed. Ask yourself, what are you building when no one is watching? What kind of person are you becoming when there's no one around to praise you or validate you? That's the real measure of power, because when the spotlight finally does land, it's too late to prepare. You either are the thing or you're not. And those who've built their thrones in silence aren't shaken by sudden attention. They don't need to perform, they've already become. There's a strange peace that comes with this kind of power. You stop chasing, you stop needing to prove yourself. You start moving differently, not arrogantly, but deliberately. You're no longer controlled by other people's opinions because your identity is rooted far below the surface. It's not a mask you wear, it's a mountain you've built. And people feel that, they trust it, they follow it, often without even knowing why. Machiavelli's forbidden rule, showing off makes you weak, is not just a warning. It's a path, a philosophy, a way of living that rejects superficial validation in favor of deep, lasting influence. It tells us that power is not in the noise, it's in the quiet, not in the performance, but in the precision, not in being seen, but in being felt. So, as you move through this world, ask yourself one final question. Are you building a reputation or are you building a legacy? One fades the moment attention shifts, the other grows even when no one is watching. The world may not see your throne yet, but if you build it right, they won't be able to ignore it when the time comes. And when that time arrives, you won't need to show off. You'll simply arrive, and everything will shift.